Welcome to the Symphony of Realities podcast, boldly taking you where no podcast has gone before. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation as you settle into your X, Y, and Z coordinates within time and space. Here are your hosts, Christopher Anatra and Sean Bond.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Symphony of Realities. I hope you've settled into your X, Y, and Z coordinates within space and time, because we've got an awesome, amazing guest for you today. There's going to be so much information. I just can't wait to just get into it. And remember, in the words of Van Halen, right now is everything. Catch your magic moment right now. Or as Sajady might say, spatial referencing is everything. Catch a magic moment right now. So with that said, my name is Christopher Anatra. You know me as a quantum businessman. Sean Bond, how are you? Tell us about yourself and how you're doing. And then tell us a little bit about Sajady.
Good seeing you. Hey, it's Sean Bond, Psych League, coming at you, bringing the magic. And we have a wonderful guest today that has helped us a lot and has had a magical adventure with us in multiple places. And his name is Sajady, and he is known as a teacher of teachers, mentor of mentors, leader of leaders, and the advisor of the 1%. After multiple near-death experiences, Mas came back alive to share wisdom and remarkable abilities that break through the limitations of psychology, willpower, and current self-improvement methods to change countless lives in a matter of minutes by helping people shift at their core frequency, resulting in drastic life transformation beyond physical logic.
Yes, and I have to say that I've known Mas for probably at least 2 or 3 years. His method, Exponential Intelligence, or XI, is the next generation of human advancement that utilizes the power of frequencies to massively transform your life, not just improve it. Mas has worked with business leaders, medical and healthcare providers, professional athletes, celebrities, the royal families in the United Arab Emirates and Monaco, Fortune 500 executives that include Capitol Records, Cardinal Health, Starbucks, Facebook, Fox, CCTV, the CIA, they need some help. Forbes, Microsoft, they need some help. FedEx, Australia Post, China Petroleum, and more. Mas also donates his time to assist schools, hospitals, special needs groups, local communities, and people from all walks of life. Mas, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of information. I love the way you present it. I love the abilities that you have. And I just want to ask you a question. At the beginning, when I talked about settling into your X, Y, and Z coordinates, what do you think about that concept?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, a lot of people, well, I could talk for hours on that, but briefly, a lot of people, they want to be comfortable. They want to be in the present moment. They want to be, they want to be mindful or mindfulness and all that stuff. And that's totally fine. But, that's a brain issue. You are rendered here in the XYZ coordinate, right? In this matrix, so which goes beyond your brain. So that, where you are or where you create yourself is like step A. By the time it hits your brain, that's like step Z for you. So you're missing all those components of where you need to be. So you're talking about spatial referencing, right? Spatial referencing is the way to understand where you are in the XYZ coordinate, which allows you to really help yourself become really, calm, complete, tap into your power, because the present moment, the way XI does it, is where your power point is, or your reference or your access to your limitless power.
Thank you. And one of the things that's unique about you is, well, not that it's unique, but you had multiple near-death experiences.
Right.
We read about that in your bio. What would you say could happen to someone when they have an NDE?
A lot of things. There's having an NDE is really common. There's thousands of like documented NDE cases here just in the US, but so imagine extrapolate that throughout the world. Every day, obviously somebody has an NDE, but the difference between when I had my NDEs, I used it as a tool to catapult myself into the higher realms. So instead of taking, say, a lifetime to learn the experiences of what we should know, I took a near-death experience. I didn't plan on the near death, by the way. It was all orchestrated at a much, much higher level than your physical brain. But so for me, it allowed me to expand exponentially into higher levels of understanding, and then also bringing down those teachings into this reality so we can use it or we can apply it logistically. A lot of people, unfortunately, they have an NDE and then they magnify the distortions that they were before they had the NDE because they didn't understand the power of NDEs.
That makes sense. Sean, by the way, if you have any, I have a whole list of questions from us, but if you have anything, definitely feel free to jump in.
Yeah, you keep going. I'm writing stuff down.
Okay, cool. So if we were to take this another level, how would you explain how XI, exponential intelligence, helps people?
Oh, absolutely. So becoming exponentially intelligent is like you start to become aware of how you render or you create yourself in this multisphere. You are a multidimensional being. And, so you need to understand that. And this is what I teach, high level, high profile individuals, who have everything. But then they go, well, Moss, there's something that's missing. There's something that you have that I need. And then, they come and see me, and what they're missing is that completeness or that meaningfulness in life. So to explain, what was the question again? Sorry.
Yeah, just explaining about how XI
XI?
helps people.
Okay, so XI helps you become exponentially intelligent. What that means, it goes beyond, say, the logic of the brain. And that might go, well, your brain is all that you have. Not really. Your autonomic nervous system goes beyond the brain. Your autonomic nervous system was imbued in you before you even had a brain, right? It's what I would call your super intelligent. So it's literally helping you tap into that super intelligence of who you are. That super intelligence, your autonomic nervous system, by the way, for those people who might not know, is it runs your kidney functions, it runs your liver functions, it runs your breathing patterns. So you don't have to consciously go, hey, I need to breathe. Now that I'm running, I need to breathe faster. It regulates your heartbeat, right? All those things, even before you were born, or even before you turned into, say, a two-cell being, that super intelligence created the blueprint for you to turn into a fetus, and then an infant, and then being born, and then human evolution. Right? So if you can tap into that, the precursor of who you are, basically, that's what exponential intelligence does. You can start to change the blueprint on where you got, how you got, where you are. I always say that, you are just an accumulated total of your hereditary or your genetics, your parents, their parents, and their parents. If you go 12 generations back, there's about over 4,000 people that was needed to create you. So all their history, just 12 generations back, by the way, all their history is in your cellular identity. That's a lot of history. That's a lot of distorted history. So
Exactly. That's the kind of history you don't want, right?
No, you don't.
So the technique that you use can actually remove that from someone's DNA.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And, it's like, well, you can't do that, because American scientists go, well, DNA is hard coded. You're just changing the communication. Well, that's not true. Russian scientists think very, very differently. American scientists think that 80% of your DNA is junk. Russian scientists think very, very differently. I'm on the Russian side. As their thought process, but I go a little deeper, because this is where, through exponential intelligence and, through sessions and, the 18-day meditations that you've been doing with me, this is where people start to change their identities, their basic physical structures. They don't age like their parents do. They don't get ill like their parents do. Their eye color changes because they didn't want to be exactly like their mother, and so on and so on and so on. And that's why I say it literally changes your genetics. And it's not just physical features, it's every aspect of you, your identity of who you really are at a very deep level. Like I said, you're an accumulated total of your past. So you think that you are, you, but you're really not. You're that accumulated total. This allows you to step backwards in, your multidimensional self, and look at yourself from a different perspective, not a mental perspective, but a very different perspective. And then you go, shit, I'm carrying all this bullshit that's not supposed to be me. And this is where you go, God, I don't want that. And you start throwing stuff out of your genome, literally out of your genome. So, yeah, we're going to be doing more and more tests on how it changes genetics. We have done tests here and there where I've changed like human DNA by about 300% into its better version. So so there's those tests, but we want to do a more broader test on live individuals. So
Cool.
although the physical evidence is there, because people change their lives, but we want some clinical trials. So.
Awesome. In my discoveries of self and consciousness advancement in different states of consciousness, like in Buddhism and Hinduism, they like go into the pathway enlightenment in detachment and removing all that's not you and the illusions of the self and the Maya, and that layer in the ego, the shadow, and the many other layers that are not defined by psychology.
Right.
What do you define as true self? As well, besides the limitation of the language.
Right. So the definition of true self is where, well, to render who you are, to render, say, again, the way XI sees it, exponential intelligence sees it, is that, you're a limitless being, a timeless being, right? To render yourself in this reality, you'd have to have filters. And these filters are basically how time and space work. Right? These filters render. You have a filter for again, and I'll give you the base filters, but there's many others. But there's a filter on, say, time and space. The next filter would be, well, you're a human. You're a physical embodiment of a human. You're not like a squirrel or a snake or whatever, right? Because that would be, their filter. Once you're a human, and then, by the way, if you run that human filter, you again are a cumulative total of the human species. So just imagine all the stuff that's happened in humanity. That's a lot of stuff we just don't need, and that's why we keep recycling all that bullshit that we have. But then you have a man or woman frequency, and that filter is kind of messed up, as you can see the world, right? Yeah, and that we're very, very confused on that filter. And then you have cultural patterns, you have you have age patterns, you have abuse patterns, and all that. Those are all filters. The way your hair looks, the kinkiness of your hair or the curliness of your hair, whatever. Again, those are all filters, what we call like genetics. These are like, say, spiritual genetics that render you. So if you have a projector here, and then you shine this light, it goes through all these filters, and then it creates you. That makes sense? That's pretty clear, right? So what your true self is like, how much of these filters can you eliminate and still exist in physical form to identify who you are? Because once you snap out of this physical form, you have no consciousness. You are everything all at once.
Cool.
So, which is pretty immense, but again, you can't identify who you really are because you're all things. So again, the definition of true self is how pure can you be, or what's the least amount of filters that you can have and still render and create yourself in physical form.
Cool. Yeah, I loved your presentation in Ibiza when we went. And there are many trips for those that looking
Yeah.
that you hold. What because I'm looking at this in multiple angles, but I also love
Mhm.
to get your perspective on in your awareness of where the source of this light projector is in
Mhm.
if in any tangible location of the self in the cloud of the field of the source field that branches out from all the source of all existence to coming
Sure.
and the layered filters and personality and territory of individuality and fractaling. And then how does that overlay with our body and what we focus on with our healing of ourselves?
Okay. So I call that the multisphere. So that source actually is within, not within your body, right? It's the center of the universe. Well, let's put it that way. It's the center of multidimensional space. So you're part of nature, right? Well, you're part of the universe, which is part of the planetary system, which is part of Earth, which is part of nature, which is part of, the animal species, which is part of that. So you have all those filters, by the way. So that light, that source, if you want to call it God, I use it pure source, is like in the center of the universe, and then it just expands out. And so if you're, for example, and again, it's a topic that I discuss like 4, 5, 6 lectures. It's that long, but the center, the say the God particle, the God light, your light. So if you are like here, for example, to the left, to west, so your aspect of say God is to the west, and it shines and it goes through all these filters and then it renders your body out here. So again, like point A, where you are, and then point Z is where you would be, your end result of who you are. So does that make sense? Your body is not, your essence is not within you. You are not a temple for your soul. In fact, when it gets to say your arena of who you are, you actually there's a sphere. When I had my second near-death experience, I saw a sphere around individuals. It's like a hologram. It's like a 3D projector that renders your physical form, and that's how we have like a 3D experience that we
I
have.
agree.
Yeah.
Into the layering process, because after that course, I started going more into that process
Mhm.
and like tracking things back. As you're growing from a micro perspective of taking on all the layers of what you inherited this life to your other lives, to your DNA, to the expanded territory of what you can hold up in man's place of responsibility, and then that power that comes with it. And then
Mhm.
you go to your local area, your as a caretaker, and then eventually the planet, etc. What
Right.
have you found in tracking back the core and the meaning and the purposes behind the whether there be any, or what the light side turns it into from like whatever distortions or dark or limitation or blocks that are projected on to us? Where do you see that coming from? And then the cores of that might be the threat that you might be able to find the thread to pull to start to unravel for yourself, and more than just yourself, if it is within the divine will of, yeah, and not in opposition to what others would have in growth.
Oh, absolutely. If you're in your divine divinity and you are your best possible version of who you are, you don't encroach upon others. That's the law of the universe. If you look around in the planetary system, everything is in harmony. If you look at nature, everything is in harmony outside of man. So you don't encroach upon others. So if you're an observer of yourself and you become the best possible version of who you are, and again, this doesn't mean, well, I need to make X amount of money, or I need to be a better parent, or I need to be, help people more, or anything like that. That's beside the fact. When you are a bright light without any darkness or filters, when you're shining your brilliance, you automatically are abundant. You are automatically a good parent. You automatically are a good person. Most people do it the other way. They're dark. Their light is very, very dark, because of heritage, what their personal experiences. But then they try to be a good person. They try to cover it up. They do good and all that. It doesn't work that way. It's supposed to be the other way around. So that eliminates, say, the darkness within you, and that's your trajectory. Eliminate as much darkness or as much filters as you can, and still exist in this reality. But once you do that, like you all have changed, have you noticed that people around you change because you've changed? So that's how you eliminate, say, darkness.
What do you, sorry, just to go off that, what do you think is, in the continuing that question, what do you think is the origin and the purpose of this darkness and why we're born into it in the first place?
It's not really darkness. It's just opportunities for you to reference where you are in space and time. The more enlightened we become, and that's where, like Christopher was saying, spatial referencing, call it spatial referencing. At first, you're spatial referencing your identity in this reality, like the trees or whatever that's here. But then later on, you spatial reference like dimensions of yourself. You spatial reference realities of yourself. So the darkness that you're seeing is not, again, it's not God's will or anything above, beyond you. It's like of your own creation. So you need that darkness. You need that heaviness to render or create an identity of who you think you are.
Wait, that makes you stronger?
It only makes you stronger not by pushing against it. It makes you stronger by going, you know what? I don't need that identity. For example, people who have been, with this one lady, she was in a like wheelchair for I don't know how long, like most of her life. She's been ill. She was in a wheelchair when I saw her. She was at an event, and I worked on her. She walked out, literally walked out, and later on she got depressed. It's like, Moss, I don't know what to do with myself. I have no identity left, because her whole life was based on an identity of going to the doctor, trying to get well, and you remove all that because that's what she needed, right? You remove all that, and it's like, shit, I don't know who I am anymore. So again, when societies stop and be a better version of who they are, they don't need to. You don't need to save the planet. You don't have to have, because that's an identity. I need to save the planet. The planet doesn't need you to save it. You be a better version. You're not going to abuse the planet. You're going to. I need to save the animals. I need to save clean water. Save the dolphins and all that. That's an identity, a distortion of self. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but if you awaken to your own version of who you are, again, you would do things to naturally not harm the planet or anything else, and you would be in harmony with nature, and we'd all get along. But most people don't need that. Their objective or their identity is like, I am a whatever to help this, and that's their identity. So it doesn't work out well. It hasn't worked out well.
So like automatic, and then you don't, like, as you enter into that self and let go of the weighted coats, that and the lightness comes on that goes with
Absolutely.
that. It just
Absolutely.
automatically also helps the collective, your DNA.
Oh, you're resonating. Yeah, you're harmonizing, as I call, what I do is all about frequencies. You change your frequency, you resonate to a higher version, the highest version of you. That highest version of you, by the way, is synchronicitous with nature. And beyond, because you're a much grander being, say, than what nature could be, or animals and so on like that. So you would harmonize with, say, a universal frequency, which actually helps nature. This is where we can become the caretakers of Earth for real, not the destroyers of Earth. So, and then it allows nature to harmonize even more with itself, and it creates this this cycle. Nature harmonizes you, you harmonize nature, and so on and so on. That cycle, by the way, is the same cycle as your spirit harmonizing with your physical body. As as your physical body comes in tune, your spirit harmonizes even better, and then which allows you to harmonize even more physically. And it's again, it's a beautiful cycle. We don't do that as humans.
I was going to say, I heard you give like a really good illustration for the way these realities work.
Mhm.
We're likening it to being on a ship,
Yes.
and like all the, let's say, 25 decks on a ship and 100 rooms in each level, and
Mhm.
there's other ships as well. Could
Yeah.
you just relate that to the audience? Because I thought that was a very unique perspective to help explain to people how these realities work.
Oh, absolutely. So that, the scientists go, well, there's you're a multidimensional self. There's another doppelganger out there that's doing this and that, right? They're really not. The possibilities of you doing that, it is, but since your light isn't there, they're just possibilities. Okay. So what Chris was talking about is that you're a multidimensional being, but you're not just multidimensional, you're multi-reality or conscious beings. Again, the filters that you run is like layers of consciousness, by the way. Okay. So what he was talking about is that you can imagine, you can close your eyes too, and I can actually guide people, even if it's on this recording. I
Please.
can guide people in that place. So just take a breath in and notice that you're on this cruise ship. It's huge. It's a huge cruise ship. Okay. And, there's 10 layers within this cruise ship. Okay? So each floor, the 10 floors, there's like 100 rooms. So within each room, there's a different experience that you could have. Okay? So level 0 or level 1, floor 1, you go to room 1 and say it's an orange room. So everything of you becomes orange or turns orange. Everything that you experience is orange. No matter what you do, if you stay in that room, everything you experience, touch, taste, feel, whatever it might be, is orange for you. Okay, you go to you go to same floor, floor 1, but you move over to completely the opposite side, and that is an experience of blue. Everything that you do there is blue. Again, whatever you touch, taste, eat, experience, love, make money, whatever, it's colored with blue. So you can again, and just to liken it to say a real situation, floor 1 is that everything that you experience in this reality, which is the floors, everything that you experience in room 1 is about abuse. No matter what you do in room 1, it's always tainted with abuse. So you make a lot of money, you'll get abused by it. You have relationships, you'll get abused by it. You eat food, you'll get abused by it. So room 100 on this floor is the opposite. Anything that you do, you're lucky, right? You flourish. So you make money. It's like, wow, you become more of an expansive state. So that's the dimensions or different floors that we exist in. Okay. If you go to floor 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 10, whichever, it's the same experience. Abuse and abundance, let's say, without abuse. Okay. Or abuse and enlightenment, let's just say, or again, orange or blue, however you want to define it. Each floor is a different way of experiencing that experience. So floor 1 might be really, really cold, for example. So no matter what you do, you're getting abused and you're really, really cold. That's how that abuse comes. If you're making a lot of money, well, that reality of you is, again, really, really cold. The next floor might be warmer. So by the time you get to floor 10, might be super hot, whatever it might be. I'm just giving you, so the dimensions of who you are is each room. So dimension in reference. So again, you're always referencing yourself according to whatever room you are next to. That's how you create your reality. So you have rooms, which is a dimension, and then you have floors, which is realities of who you could be. Okay, and then the whole ship, for example, is a consciousness. In this consciousness, this ship that you're on, it might be that this consciousness, is dictates that you have to be in this reality specifically, this ship it's run down. So no matter, and the class it's like a C-class service. It's not a luxury yacht, right? So that's the consciousness. So no matter how much money you make, you'll still feel like, you're in like a certain class, right? You're not like first class. You're in coach or economy, because that's the ship, or that's the consciousness you're in. So you have another ship that has, again, the same amount of floors, same realities, but very, very different. This is a luxurious ship. This is where you benefit from things. This is where you, again, have perks. This is where it's higher class. So you have better service and so on. The key is that these ships are layers of consciousness that are directing or going in the same path. You're all going, no matter whether you like it or not, you're going towards enlightenment. Whether you're awake for it or not, it doesn't really matter. But all these ships are going towards that. How you go towards enlightenment is your, say, free will that you do. So that's how consciousness works, and that's how realities work, which is within a consciousness, and that's how dimensions of time and space, or dimensions, or the multidimensional self, like run for you. So what I do is, like, I see the dimension that you're in, the reality that you create yourself in, and then also the consciousness. And throughout the process, like the 18 days or whatever, you start to move. It's like, shit, I don't like being orange all the time. I want something else, and you change. So you're not changing your mental state that comes after. You change your dimension of time by frequencies, and then your mental state, your your health, relationships, all that transform for you.
Yeah, I really like how you explain that.
Yeah.
And to me, it reminds me too of something we're going to talk about in a little while, about the tesseract and the hypercube and the complexity of all of these different types of realities.
Right.
I also wanted to mention, this is going to be kind of like a two-part question, but I think you can answer it all together. But on Sundays, you have a show on YouTube called Moss on Sunday.
Yeah.
And for anyone that doesn't know you and that wants to get to know you better, definitely recommend that they tune into that. You'll get to know Moss a lot better. And one of the things that you do on that show is that you'll scan people.
Yes.
And then when you scan people, there always seems to be something consistent where for a lot of people, or most people, there's someone else inside of them than just them. And
Right.
you help like remove that. Can you just talk about that process when you scan someone, and then
Sure.
what happens?
Sure. So when I scan people, I'm not like a psychic, or I don't channel or anything like that. I basically running at a certain frequency, where I go, oh, you're in that dimension of yourself. Right? So what happens is, like, this dimension, again, it's gotten abused, it's gotten shortchanged, whatever. It's like, let's switch you over to this dimension. So that's how you change your concept of who you are, or your life experience here. So when I scan people, again, I don't channel, I'm not psychic or anything, but I see the frequency that they resonate at. So I see their frequency, and then I see some other frequency that's like mixed in. So you are, again, like I said, you're a rendering of your parents. Say, for example, here's a good one. Say, for example, that people go, oh, you know what? You've got your beautiful eyes came from Aunt Bessie. Okay. So your Aunt Bessie is in you. Now, there's different ways you can take it. Okay. Some people go, well, the ghost of Aunt Bessie is in you. Okay, that's not really true. Is another apparition is in you? That's not true. Although, and I can explain that as well. But for example, if you have Aunt Bessie's blue eyes, and they look identical, most likely you have a ton of her other characteristics within you that creates you. That's not you. I'm not saying you can't keep the blue eyes, but what I'm saying is that, okay, Aunt Bessie gave you this beautiful gift, but you have to make it your own identity. You can't, you can't have the diseases of what Aunt Bessie, because that was her life experience, not your life experience. So that's what I mean when I say there's somebody in you. other ways of having somebody in you is like, say that your parents always like drowned you, suffocated you with love, right? They basically penetrated your sphere, your personal sphere, or they abused you at some level, right? You got abused, you got, sexually abused or whatever it might be. Again, it's a penetration of your identity of who you are. So what happens is, like, say that, they get close to death, and especially that you're taking care of them, and then they die. They really don't cross over. Many people are too afraid to cross over. So what they do is that consciousness of say your parents, your father is still exist. He disconnected physical, his body unplugged from that consciousness. But since he didn't know how to die properly, that consciousness still exists. And then that consciousness has to have a living form. You are the closest thing to that living form, and then you get sucked in. So now you have your consciousness and your father's consciousness merged together. And then if you've ever looked at people whose parents have died, they start getting the same diseases as their parents. They start looking like their parents and all that. That's the reason why. Other aspects of having somebody in them is that, say somebody got killed in a house, and these are all stories, true stories. Somebody got killed in a house. You move into a house when you're a little kid. That consciousness that died there didn't know where to go, so they're still stuck. Again, still alive consciousness. You start getting wrapped up into that consciousness, especially if you lived in that same room where they did, and then, well, you morph into that personality. And this is where people go, God, I feel like someone's beside me. And this is where a lot of mental health issues happen, by the way, when you have multiple identities. There's also things like schizophrenics, those kinds of patterns. Those are all like time and space, say, values or issues that people have. And once you reset their time and space value, the X, Y, Z coordinates, their issues like literally resolve like pretty quickly. It's amazing. It sounds, really out there. You can't, but the results that I get for people is like fucking amazing. So.
It is, and how you can even like see and read things about them. Sometimes when I watched you, you can like identify their gifts. Mm-hmm. And you'll Absolutely. Say different things about them, and you even analyze what their personality is like and what should be removed.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I always joke that I know more about you than Google, the government, your parents, and I don't have to do research on you or anything like that. I can just see how you render yourself. Simple as that.
Yeah, and you could pick up on their signature frequency. So even if they use like a fake name or something, like in a chat or something, you could still
absolutely
zero right into them.
Yeah. So,
Sean, do you have a question before I continue with mine?
Absolutely. I'm going to and I'll like, I'm writing a list for what you just addressed. So I'll ask that in a bit.
Okay.
Like going back before, you brought up words such as becoming your like things that me and Chris talk about a lot, and a lot of people ask us in like sessions are, what is our purpose, and like what are we here for, and all that. And I'm like, when usually the biggest thing that I go into that helps people fulfill their purpose, whether they need to know it or not, or if it's something they need to discover, and it's also then a part of their free will, is becoming your greatest self. And you also used becoming your highest self or your best possible version of yourself.
Yeah,
and I agree with that completely, and there's this version inside of us, deep in the core of our heart, in our source stream, that already exists. Time and space collapsed into itself, kind of thing, and is waiting for you to release all that's not it, that you incarnate into with amnesia and the layers that you find yourself in the candy store, good and bad. And even the bad is just bad if you don't do anything with it. If it cycle it and turn it into something positive, it's a lesson, and then it's something great for a lot of people. And becoming your greatest self fulfills those purposes when you reach it. And that's like one of the hard things to do. It's part of the great work. And if you reach it, you start finding your purposes getting met. What you think on your greatest self and your higher self, your best possible version. How would you define and describe that for people?
Well, again, your higher self, or the best definition of you, is like how many filters can you remove to be your best possible self? So if you look at it logistically here, you know, your limitless self or your spirit is here, and then your highest, you know, your body or your rendering is here. So there's all these layers in between. The more layers that you can remove, the closer you can get to your the highest limitless possible. So logistically, that's how it works. Space and time, that's how it works, because it's based on proximity, not psychology or anything like that. Literally is like if you knew who you were, and the only way you can understand who you are, again, is eliminating those filters. You know, your identity of, like, say, being a woman these days. Again, being a woman and just the woman experience, women have to, and men as well, but we're just using women as an example. If you're a woman, just imagine you're human. So all the things that happen to you as human, it's in your cells. All the things that happen to you, that's happened to women, is in your cells. And what you do is you filter all those things out of you to define who you are as, I don't know, Samantha or Victoria or whoever. So that's a lot of filtering that you don't need, and that keeps you from understanding who you are. So you eliminate all of that, and you become very, very efficient on, say, who Victoria is. I don't know why Victoria comes up, but who Victoria is, for example. So when you do that, you understand who you are, and then you understand the possibilities of what it means to be, say, a solid, or what I call an XI woman. So that's one thing. Again, it's proximity on how close you can get to your spiritual self in a very boiled down fashion. Your purpose on life is literally, that's your whole purpose, no matter how you do it, no matter if it's saving the animals, or again, creating a cure for cancer, which you really don't need. If you were awakened, you would be cured of cancer automatically. Future generations wouldn't have to run that pattern. So everybody's purpose in life is literally to become the best possible version of themselves through what I just talked about. So your experience on how to do that is totally cool. And the one thing you said, Sean, was that you know, you people always go, well, it's a blessing in disguise, you know, the darkness and stuff like that, right? Blessing in disguise, or, you know, God put this in my way and all that stuff. Well, but then when it doesn't turn out, it's like, well, it was God's plan and all that other, no offense, bullshit. You know, it's like, and you know, the universe laws, God's laws, in its true sense, in its pure form, not religious standards or anything like that, is very precise. Look at nature, very precise, right? So there's no whimsical, there's no fuzzy logic or anything like it. It's just fucking precise as can be. So when people go, well, you know, it's what is it, a hidden miracle, or, you know, a miracle in disguise? It's really not. It's just that you had the propensity to turn that situation that other people didn't know how to turn it into a blessing for you. So you give yourself credit versus the situation. And I want to bring that out, especially for your audience, because people always go, well, X happened to me. Well, how did you approach X? How did you handle X, no matter what X is? You know, is it whether it's a, you know, an achievement of yours, or a disaster or a failure of yours? Again, how did you grow and expand from that experience? And no matter what you go through, no matter what it is, it's a blessing for you, and it's right in front of you. So it's really the people, or how you are trained, again, how exponentially intelligent are you to turn any situation into a blessing? Because every situation that you run into is always a blessing, and every situation that you run into is always a curse. It has to, because this reality is of, say, duality. You have to have those extremes, right, to understand where you are. So most people don't understand that and go, well, I'm going to go towards the light. You can't do that because it'll destroy you, because then there's no reference points for you. You want to stay dead center and master both domains, by the way, the dark and the light. And then no matter what you go through, like I said, becomes a blessing for you. So you could be a space and time ninja, and you're good to go, you know.
Well said.
Okay, so I'm gonna like take the conversation like a little bit sideways, because what I want to do is there is a painting by someone famous named Salvador Dali that's come into my knowingness, and it's really fascinating me. And I know that, Moss, one of the things you do is you can look at people and then you could read them and scan them and give us some background about them.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call up a picture of Salvador Dali and his famous mustache for everyone to take a look at. So tell me, can you guys see this photo?
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this is Salvador Dali, and he's Spanish, famous artist. What do you get from looking at him, Moss?
Yeah. So he had a lot of influence of his grandmother, from what I'm seeing, or he's very close to his grandmother or a mother. It seems like he might have had like two people that took care of him when they were young. And what they would do is literally, they would talk about, say, the grander versions in their family. From what I'm seeing, they could see the possibilities. For example, they were gifted. Okay, they could see the future. They could also see almost the past, but not so much. So when Salvador is an infant and he's just observing, the two, maybe grandmother and mom, and they're talking, they're having tea, and they're just, and that's what kids do, right? They observe and they go, oh, what dimension and space are they getting into? It's different from this space. And that's how he, say, expanded his abilities of creativity, being the famous artist. So as he grew, he started to go into those multi-dimensional, multi-reality, and even different layers of consciousness. And it's like, oh wow, that's really cool. I think I'll draw it. So his creativity comes from going into, say, altered states, if you want to call it. But he actually did it really, really well, by the way, because he didn't get altered or distorted. Most people, like Nikola Tesla, he got distorted when he went into the other realities and brought in, say, an invention to this reality. As you see, he aged, and he didn't age well. But Salvador, he actually knew where he was. He had a solid identity, or solid, say, footing, of time and space. So he knew where he rendered his dimensional self, and then he expanded, not so much like perfectly, but he would say, well, here's the difference. Most people who are really creative, again, like, say, Tesla, so they're here, but what they do, they tether themselves like a kite. They go into these higher levels of consciousness, they tap in, and then they pull themselves back in, which disorients them. And again, this is where mental instability comes, no matter how good you are, or no matter what beautiful space that you've gone into. So Salvador actually, like, hey, I'm going to anchor myself here, and I'm going to expand and stretch, literally stretch his identity to whatever creative, say, realm that he did. And he explored it, and then he brought himself back. So he had a deeper, or more of a memorable recollection of, say, his paintings. And that's why if you look at his paintings, no matter what it is, it feels different. And the reason why it's different, and by the way, even if he wasn't, say, a great artist, it's like, wow, that's a really impressive painting. The reason why is because it comes from a different dimension of space and time, a different reality. So that's how he got his gifts and abilities. So.
Thank you. I think it's going to make more sense to the audience too when I talk about his one of his most famous paintings called Corpus Hypercubus. But I wanted to ask you, Sean, sorry to put you on the spot here, Sean, but is there anything about Salvador Dali that you read into when you see him?
Well, I've said it a little bit on our show before.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, okay, so yeah, I he's not a normal consciousness. Probably interacted with drugs and changed his perspective on what is possible and saw into like how Moss says, other realms and possibilities and active dreaming, visions, and possibly some hallucinations. And those all have messages and reflections of internal workings of his consciousness, what he's been through, and what wants to communicate with him through him. And so his higher consciousness, using that body to make a big change and influence that will affect the rest of the world, and is influencing artists to create. And when you create with art, there's more going on than what happens to the consciousness of the people that observe it, upgrades, trade with the person, a system of commerce, like kind of like grid working as your art travels around the world, also extends your reach and effect. And then so his spirit is utilizing that, even what he's doing now. And yeah, like I said in the shows before, there are some anomalies in his timeline that are open to change. Things with how time works, so things are gonna come and be viewed that you wouldn't know existed before, and just like comes in. So
Okay.
Yeah, the thing I want to add on with Sean is like, sure, drug use and all that. So some creative artists use drugs to escape into those realities so they can access those. Okay. Say Salvador, or people that run his patterns, they're already creative, but what they see there, the possibilities of what is there, and then you come into that human, say, filter, and it's like, shit, this reality sucks, man. We could be so much better. So he uses drugs or whatever to say, dumb himself down, not get creative. So there's different versions on, say, why somebody would take drugs. So basically, he would use drugs to cope with the possibilities of what humanity could be that he saw there. It's like, but how do I instill that in people here? What if we could instill that with people here? He didn't know how to do that, and it really distorts you when you see a lot of abuse and distortions and the chaos of the world. And it's like, shit, this reality doesn't have to be that way. There's a lot of people waking up today and going, damn, this reality doesn't have to be that way. We want something different. So
Yeah, thank you for that.
Hmm?
So with all that said, we have like an idea of who Salvador was.
Hmm?
Now, one of his famous paintings, I'm going to just bring this up now, is called Corpus Hypercubus. And it's basically the crucifixion of the Christ on not the cross, but on what's called an unfolded cube, or the concept of the unfolding of the cube, or the hypercube, or the tesseract. And in movies like Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey, there was like a scene where he's traveling through, goes into the black hole, and he's traveling through time and seeing all these different versions of his daughter in the library and trying to find the right one, etc. So there's this whole concept about cubes and time and unfolding of time, and perhaps the 4D like us beginning to understand the 4D expression of time.
Sure.
And one of the things I thought was really cool was at the bottom of the painting, and this is oil on canvas, and painted in 1954. There's like a checkerboard. Yes. And I know, Moss, sometimes you talk about the checkerboard. So when I saw this, I immediately thought of you, and I'm like, oh, I'd like to get Moss Sajady's viewpoint on this painting. So with that, like, what do you think?
It's beautiful, actually. I tap into individuals like Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad, and or anybody to learn from, so we don't have to repeat the same mistakes, and jump ahead. because they already discovered it. So in the 18-day hyper meditations that we do, I talk about the checkerboard floor. Those are the dimensions, or basically what I was talking about, like the different rooms in this ship, right? So if you are hovering over, say, a certain checkerboard, then you render yourself through that checkerboard, through that light of who you are. So all possibilities of you exist. And Jesus knew this. This is what I was talking about. Salvador, he'd go into, say, another dimension of self and see himself, or see a different possibility of himself by moving in space and time. But he always knew how to come back to the reality or the dimension that he's from. That makes sense for you?
Mhm.
And then if you notice Jesus, he's not beaten up or abused or, blood or anything like that. He's a beautiful being, and just understanding space and time. The cross, by the way, I think, who is it? Is it Picasso? Who did the arm, and then the circle? Was that
Oh,
Picasso?
Da Vinci,
Da
the
Vinci, Da Vinci. Sorry,
fortuitous
yeah, it's Da
man.
Vinci.
Yeah, Da
Yeah.
Vinci.
So that is actually a rendering of the sphere that I see around people. It
Oh,
literally is a perfect sphere
like a
around
bubble,
you.
like the bubble of reality concept.
Yes,
Okay.
the bubble of reality. Exactly.
Okay.
So that is what, Da Vinci saw. So that's so the cross, or the cube, is literally how you render or you create your physical form within the dimension of this reality. So in another sense, this reality, and again, if you move from one checkerboard floor to another, you will experience a different, say, experience, or you will be a different version of yourself. So just like that ship, there's like realities above you, there's realities below you. So I always, in the hyper meditations, I always say, okay, like what dimension or what checkerboard are you standing in? And then that tells you where you need to go to be a better version of yourself. So Jesus knew this. Salvador is an observer of how Jesus saw that. So does that make sense? I mean, you can ask me
Yeah.
other questions
Yeah.
about it, but that's a beautiful painting, and a very depictive on time and space. Time is always like three-dimensional. The fourth dimension of time is the coordinate that you are rendering yourself in. So, so, um, if, so if you're like in coordinate, 1, 3, 4, it's like longitude and latitude. If you find longitude and latitude, right, and that cross, right, it literally depicts. So that cross basically depicts exactly where you are on Earth, on the surface of the Earth.
That's cool.
So
I like that. Yeah.
yeah,
I like
so
that
you
concept.
have a longitude and latitude, which is called the fourth dimension. It tells you exactly um, what dimension you're creating yourself in, which reality you're creating yourself in, which consciousness you're creating yourself in, and then what time frame you're creating yourself in. So, for example, if your fourth dimension is off by 50 years, you could render yourself, and again, you wouldn't exist, but I'm just giving you an extreme. 50 years ago. So if you had a fourth dimensional coordinate that was 50 years in the past, you would create yourself here, but you would not see anything that was created from what would be that 20s, 1970? Yeah, that's about 50 years, right? So, so although you would be born in 2023, 50 years ago, so you would see everything that happened from, say, 1973 past. You would not see any rendering, you would not see any buildings, you would not see computer technology or anything, or you wouldn't understand it um, um, if you lived in 2023 with your time coordinate that far off. Did that make sense how that works
Yeah, that's
for you?
deep, but that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people, though, they're not 50 years off. There might be a couple minutes off or even a couple milliseconds off. and it distorts you or disorients you. So this is a perfect rendering on, again, it's literally the X for Jesus is literally just the coordinate on where you should be in the fourth dimension. And again, it's just literally like longitude, latitude, but much more in depth, say, instructions on how you render yourself. That's what I was talking about, by the way. Yeah, beautiful painting.
Yeah, and to me, it's almost like symbolic of helping us understand, like that we're starting to have more of an idea of what time really is,
Yes.
especially like with all these frequencies coming in, and the talk or the concept of the end of time or the end of the ages, starting a new period. Do you have any thoughts about that concept as well?
Oh, absolutely. And I've predicted this long time ago, years before what happened in society and so on. So as we change, the universe is always like redefining itself. It's always upgrading itself. So time and space is the first thing that upgrades, and then the universe, the planetary systems, nature follows suit. But what happens is that humans don't follow suit. They go on their own time scale. So what we've done is like it's like a rubber band. We're part of that whole system, and we're going the universe is basically nature is going this way. Humanity's going, no, we'll just stay here and just recreate ourselves the way we've been for centuries. It doesn't work that way. And then basically it just, you get so far off center like humanity has that it's like shit. And then, consciousness or the universe gets an upgrade like it is. Time becomes more efficient. And I'll explain what that means, by the way. But what happens is like you get so far off center that all of a sudden it's like you can stay here, but as we go further, as time and space again defines itself even more efficiently, you're going to die, right? And this is where societies or cultures have committed literally suicide. They just like disappear. If you look at past cities that are just gone, and you go, what the hell happened to them? They went too far off, the support of, say, the universal time and space. So now is a great awakening where people can wake up and go, we're supposed to be over there. No matter what, you're going to get snapped, just like a rubber band, right? You're pulling and pulling, and then all of a sudden you just let go and just boom, you get snapped back into perfect time and space. And that's what humans are headed for. The people who don't want to go there, well, they just like literally disappear. That's what's happening now. So the efficiency of time and space, when I say it's efficient, you guys remember back in the day, your cell phones, the first cell phone? It wasn't very efficient. It didn't make calls that well.
No, no, it is very expensive.
And very expensive, and it was very limited. But over time, it's progressed, and now we have this, which is more powerful than what the computers that sent the first Apollo, whatever it was, that got sent to the moon. The computers in your phone. So again, as time becomes more and more efficient, what means is that we don't need as much, say, density to create ourselves here. So, or a better example is back in the day, you had this parka that was like weighed like, 100 pounds to keep you warm. But now they have the same materials that, they have this thing that, you could fold in your hand and it'll keep you just as warm. So time and space is going that way as well. It's creating itself in a more efficient manner, which allows you to do amazing things in this reality that you couldn't do before because it was so dense, it was so heavy. So you'll see amazing things happen, almost like defying gravity. And that's because, again, we're expanding into possibilities that we never thought existed in this reality.
Well, the constants and the laws of physics, as we see, the constants aren't constant, and they're built up off of other constants that aren't constant, but are mostly more likely to happen based on the situations of the environment, and little things change, and especially closer to the core, and we see a new fractal perspective on what time or physics of different things can be.
Oh yeah, they have a university. I don't know which university it is, but I think it's in a cave or something, and they hold measurements. So of like you said, constants, scientific constants, they've changed throughout the years. Like measurements have changed.
Right? Light, they just cover it
Um,
up, change the whole metric system to it.
Yep. There's tons of stuff that is like, well, that's just constant. Velocity of light changes, because again, light goes through, say, a less denser fabric of time and space, which allows it more, more speed. So the speed of light, is that a constant, or does it change through, the fabric of time, like I said, or the environment, right? Very, very different. So a lot of those constants do change quite a bit. Yeah. So that's what we're seeing, and it's all because the base structure of how we see things are changing.
One of the things that surprised me related to that was the electrical conductivity of gold, silver, and copper. I was always taught that gold had the highest conductivity, and then silver was second, and then copper was third. And now it seems that it's not true anymore. Now silver is the most conductive to electricity, then copper, and then gold is last. So it does seem
Wow, that's
like
crazy.
physical constants are changing like that.
Yep. Yeah. What I just explained gives you the reason why, so yeah, time and space itself is changing. I see time and space. People think time and space is say a measurement, right? It's really not. Time and space is literally a molecule. You step into that molecule, you render yourself differently. So that's a whole fascinating subject on its own, by the way.
Yep. Sean, go ahead.
What do you think of retrocausal psychokinetic experiments? Like they've been able to change the outcome of like, can you influence more right clicks or left clicks? And then it makes a difference in the ending experiment, but also putting that in a vault and not knowing the answer to it, and then people telling people to influence the outcome back in time, and then it working. What do you think of that concept?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's what I do with, that's how I change people, by the way. I don't change their current self here, although that's possible. It's a lot easier to change, say something happened to you in childhood, right? You can't change what happened to you in childhood, but you can change what you attach to the meaning in childhood. So once you change that version, say that 10-year-old self, it creates a domino effect to your current version of who you are, because those are all living aspects of who you are. You could literally replay yourself. You can, if you had that power, you could just go back to another time frame and then relive your life. But in this physical reality, we just don't have the knowledge or the intelligence just yet. But if you heal yourself at 10 years old, all the possibilities that you ran again with that filter of, say, abuse or whatever else, you change that, everything changes about you, and then your present opportunity changes as well for you. So who you think you are at this moment changes. Again, puts you in a different dimension of time and space, and then the opportunities around you is always obviously different because you're in a different dimension of time and space, and that's how you really change. So going back and forth, absolutely, people can change. Very similar to the double slit experiment. Your observations totally at that level, or even the double slit experiment. By the way, you know, um, you know, scientists have a certain version. I have a certain version, but when they're seeing, a photon of light, that photon basically has no directive. So basically, it's just a pure photon of light with all possibilities that exist in it. But to come into this consciousness, then it has to have some kind of direction to create, whatever we see here. This is all a construct of, say, direction. Does that make sense, this reality? So like the light or the flowers or whatever that you're seeing, right here is literally This is like, okay, you are here at this moment in time, thus, you can see a leaf. So that's how all that works. So in that experiment, all possibilities or most possibilities exist because you're still in a lab, exist for that, that photon of light. And then you being a grand being, no matter how unawakened you are, you're still pretty amazing. So you walk into that environment, and then you can edit your environment. We all edit our environment, no matter what we walk into, right? And depending on how, say, powerful or awakened you are, the more awakened, the more you can edit or shift the environment that's around you.
Mm,
So,
nice. And
yeah.
as a fellow person that's experienced near-death experiences, I'm sure you relate with one at one point with one of my near-death experiences. Besides the whole flash before your life, flash before your eyes, your whole life
Oh
in
yeah.
very fast and compressed time, like how that can even happen in mind and
Mhm.
slowing down of the moment. And also, you found that in near-death experiences, a lot of people have a lot happening all at once in to maintain, possibly prevent their death, well as themselves, their higher self, their whatever you want to call it, the source, their
Mhm.
spiritual entourage, their future self, coming back and supporting themselves. Team of angels, bunch of beings visiting them all in very compressed, short amount of time, refreshing their plan from A, B,
Mhm.
all the way down to what, because like a reshuffling of the deck of what they could have this timeline, and its opportunity to change everything, because
Oh,
like
absolutely.
change the most from those experiences.
Yeah.
What do you feel and describe in the expression of that compressed time in
Um, well, it's time isn't really compressed. It's just that you are disconnected from time.
mm,
So if you look at the level 0, and I'll just put numbers to it just for clarity. The numbers don't need mean anything, by the way. So level 0 is like you're dense in time. You're solid here in time. Okay. So when you die, for example, you disconnect and you hover over time. That's level 1, by the way. Okay. If you die like a near-death experience, you usually go to a level 1 or a level 2, depending on, say, how awakened you are when you die. So basically, you're looking here, you're here, and then you're looking down. When you're on the ground, you're not seeing much. You're not observing. You can only see a certain aspect of you. Does that make sense? So when I say you disconnect from time, you go to the level 1, you have a higher perspective and you see multiple facets of who you are and the dimensions of who you could be. So that's why all those things go, oh, that dimension's there, that dimension's there. Just like a checkerboard floor. If you were just on that checkered board, you wouldn't see anything else in that Salvador Dali painting. You wouldn't see anything else other than that checkered board. But if you disconnect from time, you'll see, oh gosh, I'm on a dimension of time, this checkerboard of time. And then you go, oh, so that's me there, that's me there, that's me there. So you're not really compressing time, you're actually seeing all those things at the same time, although it feels like it's compressed. And time, by the way, moves faster the further you are away from, say, this level 0 dimension. So if you're like at a consciousness level 10, time would move faster. There's infinite possibilities, for example, then you have finite possibilities at a level 0. So again, so many things could happen to you all at the same time, or you have access to so many things.
I agree.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and science has gone into calling this the absolute, like this place beyond space and time. So
Mhm.
I'm kind of like playing around with different terms because I've experienced multiple types of time, including
Mhm.
no time, the absolute, frozen time, sped up, slow down, reverse, all this kind
Oh
of
yeah.
stuff, and then even older forms of caretake, space and time kind of flipped on the center. Imagine if it didn't exist at
Mhm.
all, it went to the singularity. And
Yeah.
going back in before bubbles, having to do with territories or realms. So I'm like, maybe we can still keep the ability to process consciousness and the states of moment to moment expression for an experience and gain of wisdom as still the category of time, but make another type of description other than linear time and what we mainly experience in limitation. But whatever, we'll play around with those titles.
Yeah. Well, time is a constant. That's the only constant that's real, by the way. Time and realities that are available during present moment time. That's always a constant. But how you render yourself in that time frame, sure, you can change it. So like, it's not like time reverses, but you can go back in time and like review yourself. So in that case, time would go backwards, or some people cycle time. Like say, for example, something happened to them in their mid-20s, and they can't get over that time frame. So what they would do is like, and this is where people have gotten frozen, they're like 60 now, but they look like a very young person, like in their 30s or 40s, right? So they're not going in present moment time. They basically go back and always like view themselves from that moment of whatever it might be that stopped time for them. You can see people who, again, maybe saw a tragic incident and they stop time and they can't let go of it. So they're stuck in that realm, but time is moving forward, and then they see their physical body up ahead, and it distorts them even more, which leads to mental health issues and so on like that, which is an issue in mental health, is more time distortion than psychological distortions. So, but again, I just want to emphasize that time is always constant. That's why carbon dating works. That's why a lot of things in science work, because there's a constant to say reference by. Our ability to say transcend time and distort time of our own experiences, that's different.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and with the filters of time that come from our past and what we were before this, I noticed in the inheritance of one of the layers of the filters that we have to release off ourselves, that's coming from the soul in past life bleed over. When I was finding bleed overs that came in, and I was like looking at how to release them. Some of them were set in stone. They needed, especially like the ones that were interacting with a bunch of different chess players. So you couldn't necessarily change those. But some of the lives were not set in stone. Like the ones that had a trauma on them that was big, and I was like, oh, is that the main point of the timeline in which it should be? And because I was getting a large amount of attack and targeting from different things that I was tracking back, I found out there's predators that go on that level and attach and try to add negative filters through different layers other than the current life, and will attack a bunch of different past lives. And all the added on stuff doesn't need to be there. And once you release it, it lifts that out of that, and toward is another aspect of you bringing towards your greatest self by releasing the lines of force that make up the personality of who you are and why that is positive and negative. What do you think of the concept of changing those past lives in a state of like, it's Schrodinger's cat box, it's detached from this current bubble of reality, and it's not set in stone, and it can be live and dead. Let's say the past life could have gone through intense amounts of trauma, or you could have turned left and avoided all that, and then it not be passed down, and then you purified it from that perspective.
Well, well, like I said, when I help people, like say, again, you're 10 years old, you had a traumatic experience, you can't really change the experience because that's literally written in the sands of time. But you can change the attachment or the meaning that you gave, which gives you, again, a different dimension that you find yourself in the present moment time. So the same thing happens when, a previous lifetime of yours, or, you're just an extension of literally your parents' timeline. Literally, most people aren't awakened, so they'll just follow the footsteps of their parents and just, extrapolate it forward. So you can go back generations. You can go back to your previous lifetimes and say, for example, your great aunt that had the beautiful, blue eyes, like 10 generations back that you got them from, and you inherited not just her blue eyes, but if you can go back and change her, say, frequencies. So she's still got the beautiful blue eyes, but then she doesn't have the abuse pattern and all that other stuff associated with it. So if you change that person, then anybody that inherited Aunt Bessie's, patterns would change as well. And I've actually seen that happen. And then your identity or your genetics would change as well because Aunt Bessie's time frame changed. So I've seen that happen for sure. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and
But
confirm that for sure, and
yeah,
big life healing changes.
Mhm.
You said a really interesting phrase that may resonate with people in their mind. Like you said, some of those things are trapped in the sands of time. So and not to go off this because this is fun. So I'm enjoying
Yeah.
picking your brain. What so I'd assume what comes to mind when trapped in the sands of time, things that are set in stone, things that are needed to exist in concept of linear time for things to continue to exist in stability and things not fall apart. So
Right.
that still be in the frame of a consciousness that's being held by an experience by a higher macro manager. So let's say it's not up for regular people to be able to change that or unfree whatever's trapped in the sands of time,
Mhm.
but the authority that built it in the first place, or that state of consciousness. And if it's, there be a editorial concept to that in the building of the future for sure, and the future still being able to be merged in a state of consciousness that we've experienced with past and present together. Not saying that it's for regular people,
Right.
but let's say that's a state of mind that could be achieved.
Right. So, well, a couple things. One, on Bessie, for example, say 3 generations back. So anybody that inherited Aunt Bessie's experience, of her genetics, again, when you edit that for Aunt Bessie, everybody that inherited that would change as well, even if they're dead. That makes sense because those moments of time are like say written. So when I say that the sands of time, those things are written. It's because if it wasn't written solid, you couldn't say create this reality on top of it because it's not solid. That makes sense for you.
Right.
So you can't change those. Those are like solid blocks, but you can change the meaning of those things that are, again, once they're written, you can't unwrite them because that moment in time, that constant, again, it's a constant. You can't go back in time and rewrite. You can rewrite history, you can rewrite the definitions of history, but you can't change the physical, say, things that happened in that moment of time. That's really the key. So people who get abused, or you said predators and so on like that, and it's not that there aren't predators out there. I mean, there are, but it's like, but what is it in you? Because you're always the master of your time and space dimension. But what is it in you that's allowing predators to happen to you? Or allowing to invade in your space. You can change those. So you can't change predators, but you can change how you run through that system, right? And then those predators will go, oh, that person doesn't want me to invade them. Like, okay. And then, you're honored by that dimension or by that reality. It's just like having an immune system. If you've got a robust immune system, there's billions of bacteria and viruses and all that stuff that are floating around that just kill us, right? But since you've got a healthy immune system, they go, oh, it doesn't really matter, right? We can, overcome those. viruses and bacteria. Same thing here with frequencies. There's a lot of, say, viruses and bacterial frequencies that are can attack anybody, but is your immune system, your frequency immune system, is that robust enough for you to, again, overtake them? So that's what's really key.
The greater layers of the immune system and spirit and all aspects of your being.
Yep, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention too that it's almost like the shortcut that you provide to people so that, whether it's these physical type things they've inherited or even personality traits, by you helping them see their patterns and moving to another deck of the ship, or going from the C-class ship to the triple star ship, whatever it is, it helps them, go into that reality where things are a certain way. They have luck and abundance and whatever the things are.
Absolutely.
And this question actually is going to include Sean for some of his input, because I've done meditations with you and I've super enjoyed them, and I want to talk about some of those at the conclusion. But sometimes after I do a meditation with you, I'll talk to Sean, because I don't necessarily clearly see all the types of things that Sean will tune into. And I know a lot of times I'll say, Sean, like I did a meditation with Sajady and blah, blah, blah. Tell me what you see. And Sean, give the audience an example, because even though it may not be obvious to them what's going on, you see things in another perspective that helps people, help me realize that things were really happening besides what you can observe around you. But do you remember any examples of the things we've talked about?
Yeah. Do you remember? I remember when you, like, for example, when you went to New Jersey and we saw Moss, and after I had to drive you home because you started having an emotional somatic release and crying and stuff. So it was nice. And then we tuned into some of the stuff that you did for me and him. You helped me release a stillborn sister I had that was and other that was for my mom that had a miscarriage, and that was around, and we're and releasing filters off from DNA lineage and things that you saw around in ghosts, and I can definitely feel the difference in my psychic ability increasing when having myself more clear. Your emotional body and your ability to sense into intuition expanded as well with your heart field. I'm trying to remember everything. It was a while ago.
I know there's literally so much. Do you remember one of the most recent times it had to do with healing, and you were saying, like you've got these healing programs just explain that.
So I could see him and his entourage, what looked like the type of consciousness that's similar to angels, and a evolution type of program that was going on in your soul that allowed you to amplify your healing abilities. There's also some chakras above your head that like turned on, that brought in healing energy. It like expanded a lot. So it seemed like a system upgrade to amplify your healing ability, for especially with like miracle healing concept.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. I guess I was doing an event, and again, it's the filters on how people see. I was doing an event and I was helping, helping, and I'm really not a healer. I'm an awakener. I just awaken you to your best possibilities. It's like, hey, you're sick in this dimension. Let's move over here, and then you could probably cure that heart disease or cancer that you've got, but it's your choice. So, and most people take that choice though. But I was at this event, and it was interesting, and I was working on this person, and they started shifting and so on. And then after the event, this Christian based individual comes up and goes, God, when I saw you, I saw Jesus working behind you. Like, wow, that's really cool. That's beautiful, right? And then this Buddhist type individual, Eastern philosophies, it's like, God, when I saw you, I saw Buddha behind you. It was like the same person, So it's depending on your reference points or your, say, filters that you would see, stuff with. So, which is really, amazing. But I was doing whatever I was doing, or however I help people awaken, at a high level, but how people see it might be very, very different. So, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I think, the bottom line is that there you get results, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if you may not necessarily feel them right away, there'll be
Or even if you
aftershocks,
don't believe them.
even if you don't believe in them.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
And then there, explain the detox. Explain about detox, because people need to know about that. So
Sure. Well, the work that we do, and you've seen other people change, the XI community, the work that we do, literally, like you have like 10 or 20 years of transformation. Some people, especially if they're kids, they would change in, say, a 10-minute session. That's a hell of a lot of transformation. So although it's good, it's basically you move from one distorted version of who you are to a very clear version, a very healthy or very abundant version of who you are. So detox is just getting used to that better version of who you are, and then allowing yourself to move away from that old version. And so you would confirm your deletion or confirm your movement in that dimension by going, yep. So you'd have to change your habits or your belief systems or the mental state of who you are. Those things I can't do for you, although it makes it easier. And then you go, yep, that's not me. I'm not going to run that habit anymore. Or you might say, say you have an abusive relationship where you attract abusive people into your life. Well, I help you switch. And then what'll happen is that you most likely will get attracted to somebody that would abuse you, and they go, well, shit, it didn't work. But in this case, instead of finding out like 6 months down the line or, a year, immediately it's like, God, that person is, it's going to be turning into, an abusive relationship. At that moment, because of free will, at that moment, you choose, you go, I'm not going to go into that relationship any further. I'm going to disconnect it. So you confirm your deletion or you confirm the change of your new dimension. So again, you always have like free will on choosing your old self. So you'd still have to go through some experiences and to go, yep, that's not me anymore. That was my old version. So detox is literally a graduation of who you were, and you're seeing your past, your old self, from a different perspective, literally.
yeah, and sometimes it doesn't feel very good.
It doesn't feel good. It's like, shit, I did that to myself and I believed in it. You know what I mean? It's like some of the stuff that people go through. It's pretty sad. Or, sometimes memories of the old come up that you buried, like people who have a hard time remembering their childhood because it's just easier. It was a great tool. Otherwise, if they did, they'd be so, say, disfigured, mentally from that experience, they close it. But to move forward, you have to heal yourself. So now you're at a better place. You're at a stronger place of who you are. And then you can go back and it's like, okay, what happened back there? And you go, okay, that's what happened. I understand it. I can heal my younger version of who I am. And then it heals you at the present moment for you.
You also talk, instead of being a healer, awakening person. I love going into awakening energy. It's one of the most useful, needed energies on the planet. On the skill, like being able to develop in the solar plexus, generate it. It's much needed because you first go internally with it in practice, wake up the soul. There's a lot of dormant, asleep aspects of soul. There's a chess move with the opposite of sleep energy that's put around to make something dormant not working. Soul has a bunch of generators, memory, programs, systems, etc., that are very valuable to the person in their evolution, but a lot of it's dormant. So most people, it's like a paperweight until they free more. That's why devils want them. Don't ever give it to them. And then once you start awakening the soul, the mind, aspects of the consciousness, awareness, ability to perceive, then you can have a distribution system outward in unity with everyone in the collective, if they so choose to trade that with you. Like if their higher self were to like, hey, you're good at that, can you help me wake up my lower, my person? And so yeah, can you talk a little bit more about awakening energy, and also what is your perspective on healing, and what is your method on healing? And you said it's different than others, and you are
Yeah.
not a healer, but you're still healing. It's just in a different method.
Yeah. So, well, so I awaken your possibilities of who you could be. So what most people or most healers do, just like say, you've got heart issues, for example. They give you a medication for it. It doesn't really resolve your heart issues. It just helps you, you know, you know, it's kind of like a duct tape. It doesn't really help. You still have a propensity of heart issues, and then if you have kids, for example, you pass that propensity on to your kids. So when I help you awaken, it changes your genetic makeup, and it's like, you know what, you don't have to have heart issues. So you don't identify with a person who had heart issues, even that whole identity like dissolves, and you are, say, a strong self that didn't have heart issues, because that might have been your parents. So you identify yourself as a person. Again, you remove that filter and you identify yourself with somebody with a healthy heart. Um, so so that's the difference. Most healers or energy workers or chiropractics or anything like that, they don't go to the core level issue or the origin of why they got the issue in the first place. Same thing with, like, say, money, for example. You know, they could make people could make a lot of money, but then that money, say, abuses them, or that money destroys them. Or why is that? Because they don't know. Again, maybe in the origin, when they were growing up, or even their parents' lineage, there was a lot of, say, lack. They might have grown up in the war, for example, right? There's lack, there's famine, and so on. So out of that, and this is, most of society, by the way, what happens is that, you sacrifice yourself to be abundant. So what you do, and then that genetics literally passes on to you today. And then what are you doing? You're sacrificing yourself to be abundant. So again, it's the same result. So what I do is like, no, wait, let's go back here and give and understand, say, the equation on what you think of what success equals, or what you think having a healthy heart equals, or what you think relationship, and then you change, again, that equation by changing your frequency. So that's really the big difference. I change you at your origin of your or your master blueprint, and the way you can tell is that when I help you awaken to heal yourself, the loved ones around you change as well, especially if you have kids. It's like, gosh, mom, I don't have anxiety anymore, or I don't have whatever heart issues anymore, or, that you did, or mom, or dad did, and all that. So that's how you can tell you're changing your core structure. I call that the Roger Bannister effect. So I don't know how much time we have, but quickly, Roger Bannister was the first guy who ran the 4-minute mile. Okay. And so he ran a 4-minute mile. It's world news. And then 2-3 months later, more people ran the 4-minute mile. Right. And then that consciousness awoken. It's like is it the 100th monkey
Right.
experience? Yeah, it's like that.
Exactly.
Right. So in nature, say a monkey on one island figures out how to use a tool instantly. There's another monkey on another totally different island. No communication. They figure out. So the consciousness change, the availability, that possibilities change. Or you can do, say, like a Michael Jordan. Again, brilliant guy, amazing, basketball player, but he didn't change that consciousness for other people. He just changed it or created it for himself, and most people do. If that makes sense. Other people didn't really, say, learn or expand automatically, because it was just Michael Jordan's consciousness that he elevated to, which is totally cool. Most people do that. So Roger Bannister, somehow he tapped in, changed the consciousness for everybody, so that possibility was available for everybody. Success is, by the way, the same way, where you become successful, and if you do it right, people around you become successful. People tap into, it's like, hey, how did you do that? Oh, this is what Sean was talking about, it's like, hey, how did you let me learn from you? And that's the way we evolve consciousness. Otherwise, we just keep, creating the wheel from scratch, which isn't beneficial for society. So that's a huge difference between what I do. Another thing too is that not only does your physical ailment say eliminate, but what happens is that all aspects of you start to transform and shift. It's not just, again, that portion of you that changes, and that's how you can tell. Again, you're changing somebody at a, say, core level or their master blueprint.
Can you,
I was
I
going to
don't know
say,
how much time you have, but can you talk about like your meditations and like people like presenting the buffet for the audience?
Oh, sure. There's so many, we do so much free stuff. Like Chris was talking about, it's like Moss on Sundays. Let's talk, where we just talk about life, why life happens the way it is, and then how you can change it. Again, the real reason why life happens. We have impact sessions on that where actually, pick on the audience and like scan them and see what's going on with them. And even in those, people like dramatically change just, with a 1 or 2 minute reading, which is pretty crazy, by the way. We have the XI podcast, Exponential Podcast. It goes deeper into, certain subjects. So that's out there for you. And then, we have, other programs. We have the 18-day hyper meditations would literally change your life in 18 days. From start to beginning, it's you dramatically change within that time frame. It's amazing to see the people you guys have been on it. It's amazing to see the chats. It's like, wow, didn't know this could happen. I could, and you expand. So it starts you on that journey for you. We have like private sessions. We do group events. We're going to Tahiti, where you can spend some time and get to really understand the concepts of time. We do.
We'll see you there.
Oh, awesome,
yeah,
guys.
Sean and I are going to go.
That's perfect, man. It's really great, and you get to really, it's more personal. It's more, you get to really enjoy the frequencies. Where I'll be in London, not at my event, but that's in early June, and then we have our own event in London and Ibiza again, by the way, coming up later on in the year. I think October, I believe. So, which is always really fun. So, plus we do a lot of like private, for high profile individuals as well.
So when does your next 18-day meditation start? What month is that?
So we just finished up June, July.
Okay.
Yeah, we used to do it every month, but it got so intense for people they couldn't keep up with the shift. So we do it every other month.
Yeah, and you have two different levels of that too, right? So what would you recommend for people that don't know anything about you but want to try out the 18 days?
Yeah. So before you do that, I would check out the Moss on Sunday, just to understand the concepts. And then once you're a little comfortable with that, you go into the essential. And even the essential is pretty powerful, by the way. It'll shift you. It helps you understand because you don't want to change too fast. That's one of the problems we have with XI. People change so dramatically fast that the kind of distorts them. It's going from like say a level 0 hotel to a 5-star hotel. People can't, they just aren't comfortable with being that, service that well, for example. But the essential is really good for most beginners, So
Yeah, I would recommend that too. Start with the essential and then go to the more advanced one.
yeah, which is the accelerated.
The more advanced one is twice a day, and the essential is once a day.
Yep.
For the 18 days and with a 2-day break.
Yeah.
So every 6 days, a 2-day break, and then it keeps going on.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of good stuff out there. Different possibilities that people haven't even fathomed could be possible, but it's real out there.
Exactly. Our life is kind of like sci-fi, and we don't just know it yet.
Yeah, exactly. We're just ahead of the trend. What we're doing now with XI, that'll just be normal. it's becoming more and more normalized. I mean, you actually hear about it or see it in movies, like Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, everywhere, everything all at
Alternate
once.
timeline.
Yeah,
Yeah,
everything everywhere all at once.
that's what we're talking about. So I'm the guy that actually does that for you, so
Very
yeah, it's
cool.
pretty cool.
And if someone wants to reach you, how could they reach you?
They can go to masajady.com. My YouTube channel is masajady.live. So MASSAJADY .live and .com.
Okay, and I'll put those links in the description below.
Awesome. Yeah.
Can you talk more on the up and coming projects like Tahiti and like what you're doing there?
Well, Tahiti, haven't planned it out yet. I mean, it's changed so many times because of COVID. But I think the people that are going to be on it, it's going to be in 2024. And it's really a celebration. We've moved on to fixing things. Back in the day, we were always about fixing and resolving and so on like that. But, there's so many people now that have, say, resolved, we can start to celebrate. For example, June 23rd, it's a coming of 2 or more people. Here in Minneapolis, we're going to be, celebrating literally the new human, new possibilities of human. And really, I've got this project called the Save the Human Project. Like I was talking earlier, people always want to save the animals and the planet. If we disappeared, they'd just they'd be fine in about a year. So it's like if we improved ourselves, the humans, we could save ourselves, and then the planet is will be fine. So those kind of things. It's all about again becoming a better version of yourself. So in the London event, it's more sciencey. It's going to be about quantum jumping, understanding, say, space and time more, taking you through different experiences, literally where you experience yourself being distorted and so on by time. I can push you into time realities and so on like that. So you start to understand how to create that for yourself. So it's really cool. Yeah.
I just made a little list of like when going back to our previous question that I said I would readdress again. I mean, so I'd like ask what to add on to this list that I'm gonna like of the projecting filters onto us. I read that it can come through DNA, family, friends, entanglement, physical or non-physical, enemies, soul, past lives, which also goes into the ego, the soul, the lower self, the mind, the psyche is same category.
Yeah.
Self, the spirit, the consciousness, higher self, the source, or like in the root chakra from the shadow, the evil or the opposer self, the sacral, the creations, the positive, negative that we make in our life, programs, sacral, sexual, evolutionary programs and system, the sovereign kind of control systems, projecting, receiving, internal, external control center and its radius, or and our divine self capabilities, authority, and its responsibilities, and that power that comes with the responsibilities. I read those are some of the filters that we have to go through. Can from your perspective, what are there any others that you know of that you've come across for audience? You don't have to go much into them until they go see your courses and take your meditations, but could you like name drop like some of those categories?
Well, sure. The biggest thing, again, those are all elements of being distorted in space and time. So those filters are, if you really look at them really close, are patterns that or filters that you've inherited from genetics or society's patterns, and you put them on those belief systems. They did a great study, like, well, the placebo effect, for example. They found out that a lot of the drugs, even stem cell injections and so on like that, they gave people stem cell injections that were placebo, and it almost worked just as well as having actual stem cell injections. So a lot of those things, again, they're filters created that's not really real for you, right? Like the dark side, or evil entities and so on like that. Are they real? Sure, they're real, but it's a rendition that man has created for themselves. So there's millions of those, not just what you just mentioned. But when you step away from it, you go, oh, okay, that's a creation of this, that's a creation of that. I see the origin of why that happened. And this helps you understand that, you can remove all those filters and just get back to the base filters. Again, you being creating yourself in human form, and then the purest possibility of being in human form. Even diseases, that's a filter, for example, that you're running, or addiction patterns, or success patterns, and so on like that. So you're always, say, creating these filters to create who you are. But in XI, you literally remove those filters to create who you are, because you are all those possibilities. You are a successful being. You are an abundant being. You are a healthy being. Automatically, you don't need a filter to be healthy. So that's really the key. It's like literally the opposite of dealing with those things. So it's just literally a pulling away from those filters and just rendering yourself.
I just wanted to put a picture of Tahiti on the screen.
Beautiful.
While we're talking.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, come join us.
Time. Oh yeah, it's gonna be a good time, guys. Yeah, we're gonna have a fun time, guys. We get to space travel. The mountain, that's got a lot of knowledge in there. And we can tap into that mountain and really access who we are, or help aid us in who we are. So quite beautiful. I'm excited, man.
Yeah,
it's a cruise.
Yep.
How many people showing up do you expect?
I don't know, because we've changed so many times. So, and it always keeps growing. We've literally doubled the number of people already just within the last month or two. So you never know. But it's a big ship. So
yeah.
As long as it doesn't get filled up with other people, there should be room.
A lack of life rafts. No,
yeah.
That's
yeah. So,
Moss, I want to thank you very much for all the time you spent with us today. I'm sure that our audience is just like, wow, so much information, another perspective, ways to look at the reality and understand how it works. I want to thank you for all the work that you do, because you do so much. It's like, I'm always amazed, like you're constantly putting out information and constantly doing so much. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you, guys.
How can people reach you? Anything besides mastersajady.com? Any other methods? Email?
Email. Well, when you go to the site, you can always click and sign up for the newsletter. We provide, like you said, Chris. We send out so much information, free stuff that you can just literally learn from. Absolutely.
Cool. How do they reach you, Chris?
You can reach me at, my email is chris@quantumbusinessman.com. You can go to my website, which is quantumbusinessman.com, or my YouTube channel, Quantum Businessman. What about you, Sean?
You can reach me at sonicleague.com, Sonic League YouTube, also on Facebook, but you can email sonicleague@gmail.com. But yeah. Smash that like button, click the notification bell, put in the comments if you'd like to see Moss come on again. Spread this everywhere. The more we see it shared, the more views, the more we'll be like, oh yeah, we need to get him on again. Talk like deeper layers. Put in what you want to talk about, and help wake up the world with these videos, please.
Absolutely.
Share.
Absolutely.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you for everyone that's watching, for staying to the end. We appreciate you very much. Until next time.
Take care.